Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the working session for Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. Let the record show all councilors are present. At this time, we'll start with our MnDOT Highway 169 corridor study. And you're up.
Let's make sure technology works here. We might be engineers, but sometimes technology doesn't work the best for us. Correct password. There we go. All right, good evening, everyone. My name's Alex Peretz. I'm the MnDOT project manager. I'm based out of Virginia, and was the project manager on the study we're going to go through tonight. I'm here with Jim Miles, our traffic engineer. He's out of Duluth, so he's our District 1 traffic engineer. We'll go through the presentation here. I also did provide a layout here, so it's a little tough to see. Most of the intersection stuff we'll be going through, so you'll see a little more in detail here. And we'll just go through this and field some questions afterwards. So I don't know, Jesse, if there's anything else you want to share on this before we get into it?
No, so Mayor, Council, we'll go through the final report. What we'd like to do, and Alex will explain this at the end, we'd like to have comments from the City Council as a memorandum within the report. So as you're going through this, we'll look at different things about the project that we'd want to make comments on for that memorandum.
So does it sound like, Alex, what we're trying to do here is get an understanding of what we agree to so that you can start your process of more final design on certain things?
Yep, and I'll get into that here through
Okay.
the presentation,
Very
kind of
good.
the next steps. So
All right.
we'll give a little brief kind of history of why we did this and what we looked at, show the intersection alternatives that we looked at here, and then kind of get into those
All right.
next steps. So that's a quick highlight of what we'll do, and I'll try to motor through this fairly fast since I know it's probably we're not the only one on the agenda tonight. So overall, like I said, we started the study to looking at the belt line from Highway 37 to 13th Street North. That's about a 2.3 mile long segment. The posted speed's 50 miles an hour through there. Traffic is roughly about 12 to 15,000 cars per day. There's pedestrian bike crossings, but some of those facilities are a little limited. The purpose why we looked at this, so Jim was really the one to kind of start looking at this or say, hey, we need to look at a study. And a lot of this was for the two main reasons are, okay, we know we're having safety issues along the corridor, especially at the intersections, different intersections like 25th, 13th, we've had safety issues throughout the years. Also through this corridor, we have numerous signals, and those signals are getting either at or near the end of their service life. So when we get to those, we try to look at those and say, instead of just putting a signal in, which is a 30-plus year investment, or in this case probably longer with the age of what some of our existing signals are, is we want to make sure what goes back in actually makes sense, right? So that's kind of what we did to look at this. As part of this is we go through the process, and I'll show some of the engagement stuff here. What we did is to document the issues, develop alternatives, and really come up with a recommended study solution here through the process. So existing conditions, really what we have right now is traffic volume's been relatively stable over the past 25 to 30 years. There's no real congestion on 169, at least as perceived in traffic engineering terms on there. As far as safety goes, and like I said, we're just kind of briefly touching on all this stuff. There's more detail in all the reports that you have, but most of the crashes along this corridor are actually at the intersections. We have some intersections that are above the critical rate, so I'll maybe let Jim explain that a little bit about what the critical rate is.
Sure.
It's a little.
So you have an average crash rate for the state at an intersection, and if you think of an average crash rate, that means about 50% of the intersections have more crashes, 50% less. That's not really that telling if you're just over the average crash rate. So we use a statistical analysis that involves a critical rate that says if you exceed the critical crash rate, and that's just crashes per million vehicles entering the intersection. So number of crashes that happen per the volume of vehicles entering the intersection. So a critical rate is something that if you exceed the critical rate, it's statistically significant. You really have something going on. It's more than just, hey, we're above the statewide average. So that's, we did look at, and you can see here, we have 2 intersections for the period that we looked at were above the critical rate. I know when we initiated this study, we had more that were above that critical rate. So there are intersections that kind of come into the critical rate, or come above and then fall below, but they're pretty consistently along this corridor. We have some intersections that are nearing or at that critical rate.
Yep. So, thanks, Jim. I know that's always a, little clarity that helps because, what is the critical rate? The other thing out here, we did have, during the study process, or the time back that we looked at, 2 fatal or serious injury crashes. So serious injury is somebody's getting, hurt in a way that is going to impact their life, is kind of what the serious side would be. Additionally, after the study wrapped up here last fall, we did have a fatal at 25th Street as well. So I just wanted to highlight that here of, that's outside the numbers we looked at because that happened after we completed our study. Additionally, like I said, just not on a safety side, but also looking at, bicycle pedestrian traffic. There's limited connections out there right now, even on the signals that are out there. The facilities aren't the greatest, just even on how the original designs of the corridor are. It's a very tight corridor with those medians, so it's tough to get some of that in there. We know there's demand for crossings, through there of just people wanting to make those crossing movements. As far as the land usage, most of the corridor is largely built out. We do know that there's some residential, developments, I think, still planned, up by 31st Street there. So, we learned that through the process of working through that, and also that, from an emergency services standpoint, 169 is kind of the main corridor. Obviously, you guys are working on your building that's in the, vicinity of the corridor there. So we're brought aware of that as well as we went through the study. When I said engagement, so we did this as a tiered approach. So this started back in August of 2023, and we really met with 3 different groups. So we'd meet with agency folks, city staff, EMS, schools, just that different level. Also meet with businesses and then open houses. And we tiered it into 3 different levels of meetings. The first round of meetings were just give us your feedback. We didn't have any preconceived notions coming into this study on what these could even be. So just give us hey, what are you seeing for issues? How are you using the intersections? And that's really what that first round was. The second round of engagement that happened in November, December, that was, okay, based on the information we pulled. So as far as the engagement, we also pulled, a bunch of the traffic counts and crash information and looked at it on the engineering side and came up with here's some alternatives that are blending in the engineering side and the engagement side. So that happened in the end of 2023, and then we did our final study recommendations back in 2024 of, hey, this is what, based off of the input we heard and just more engineering analysis, came up with the study recommendations. Some of the key takeaways from the engagement, just, safety was a big concern, especially for the motorists at the intersections, pedestrian safety at 23rd, 25th, Howard. There are concerns about traffic flow. The signals right now are sometimes, we've done a timing project to try to get them to flow as best as they can, but there's still some issues, with some of that goes on. There's general support for roundabouts, through the corridors we went through, as some of the alternative portions of it, and several ideas to, just improve the operational safety and bike and pedestrian options through here. Safety, I think,
Okay,
Jim, you were
so-
going to go over a couple.
Yeah, we have a couple slides here. As we were looking at the alternatives, the key factors is we were trying to address which alternatives impact safety, and I think we've got another slide here that which of the alternatives, we'll get to that. But so when we're looking at safety, motor safety, we wanted to compare of the alternatives we came up with, what are their overall reductions in crashes overall, so how many crashes are we going to eliminate, and maybe more importantly, how many fatal and serious injury crashes can we eliminate, because certain intersection designs are much more effective at eliminating fatal and serious injury crashes. So we have a matrix that we look at all these types of intersections and how each of these intersections kind of performs in these manners. So then another thing we look at is number of vehicle conflicts. So different types of intersections have different numbers of vehicle conflicts. That's instances in which two vehicles can collide. Certain intersections have fewer conflicts, certain intersections have less severe conflicts. And then we did the same thing for the bicycle and pedestrian safety. And then overall, we wanted to know about corridor speeds and how what we were doing would impact the corridor speeds, because generally speaking, a crash at lower speeds will have safer, better results. So then related to speeds, we looked at overall travel time along the corridor, both for the existing conditions and then any proposed conditions. We wanted to know the overall intersection delay. That's how, if you take all the vehicles entering the intersection, what's the overall delay of each vehicle? Then we looked at that as cross-street delay. So if you're on the crossing street, maybe one intersection design has a really good travel time for the main line, but not so much for the cross street. Then conversely, we looked at the 169 delay. And then each of these intersections, we said, well, if we implemented something like this, how does that impact the local road network? And finally, we also looked at how bicycle and pedestrian timing is affected, how crossing 169. And then I think we're going to other considerations that we looked at with these designs.
Yep, and I'll just go through this, so, not just the safety side, right, we're also having a look, and we had a big matrix to try to go through and look at all of, what are some of the benefits, what are some of the costs, what are, to really get to the study recommendations. And, some of it we look at is, okay, right-of-way impacts, how many parcels are we gonna have to impact when we do something? Construction impacts, how big of a detour do we have to do? Can we build it, on there? Consistency with, what our MnDOT planning is and even what the local plans are. For example, like I said, if there's development that's happening or whatnot. We look at anticipated project costs. So we, base all costs in the year we did it, but then inflate it out a 20-year to kind of see what, or I wouldn't say 20-year, but a 4 to 5 year maybe by the time we'd be able to deliver it, right? So what are the financial costs to build it? What are the crash cost savings? So if we can be safer and there's less, it sounds bad, but in actuarial terms, right, every accident has a cost to it. Fatalism more costs than a property damage. So, by looking at that, we look at what are the savings if we can reduce some of those accidents and types of accidents. So we look at it as a benefit cost with all that into it. We meld that in, like I said, with trying to take our engagement. We also work with our geometric design unit down in St. Paul. So they have to review any major intersection changes anyway, but we try to get them on board early because there's a lot of innovative ideas that they can come up with that maybe we haven't thought of, or examples of using certain things in other parts of the state that we haven't maybe used up here. So we just try to get their feedback, and it's very high level feedback. And then, we just look at the additional traffic analysis and see how things would flow through there. So we have it down to, this is a little tough to see, so I did hand out to the council just an overall corridor, and there's two alternatives here. They're pretty much the same. There's a couple modifications at 23rd, that's some options. And I will put in, these are conceptual layouts that we have. What this really does is show what the new intersection control types would be at the intersections. Some of the connections for, say, the frontage roads, or how we'd realign some of the frontage roads to tie in. Once we get into more of a final design stage is when we'd be working with the city on how do these tie in, right? So we just put these as an example. You'll see on your layouts, like over on 37th, it's showing, okay, we can maybe cul-de-sac some of those. We could do some other options there of, local frontage road reroutes. So all that stuff is stuff that we can work through, through the final design. This just gives us a concept of what the main control would be. So I'm going to go through these rather quick, and yes. Yep.
So tell me, when does that happen exactly? Final design, when do you engage us? And what I'm worried about, frontage roads,
Nope.
frontage roads, access being changed, and there's a couple of businesses that are not coming.
Yep.
When does that happen?
Yep, so, Can I answer that later on when we get into the next steps, if that works? Yeah, yes. No, you can remind me on there, but it's probably easier to explain on our next steps on how what we're kind of looking at for there. I will say, it's not a quick process. So for us, if we do a mill and overlay in the middle of nowhere, right, it's usually 4 to 6 years from conception to actual construction starting, right?
I
So,
understand, and I don't wanna
Yep.
get to year 6, and then you come and say, okay, here's what we're doing.
no. And there is, when we look at all these, right, so all of these connections are MnDOT to city legs, right? So the city would have cost participation on those city legs on whatever happens. And that's similar to what's out there now, right? So if there's a signal out there, the signal is paid for by MnDOT and the city and, you know, all the different costs in there. So that it's gonna be very involved with working with the city on any of this stuff because it's all city to city, or city to MnDOT connections with that as well, so. All right, so I'm gonna start, this is on the north end of the corridor and going south. I'm just gonna hop through these pretty quick so we can get into the last bit and some questions. So 13th, the study recommendation was a roundabout, and I do wanna highlight one thing that if you look at these are all single lane roundabouts. So you can see there's only one lane, it does work, one lane through here, not two. That's based off of traffic volumes, right? So we analyze what the traffic volumes would come in, and based off of the area that would be right kind of in this area of every quadrant. So it's the stuff that's in the circle and the stuff that just entered the circle. We base those off of volumes. And from a safety perspective, we want to start with the less lanes, the better, right? Because more lanes just are more conflict points, more chances to crash and everything else. Based on the volumes, all of these meet the single lane warrant, and it would still function through on that.
Alex, the
Yep.
roundabout on 37 and 169, what is that classified?
That went through, and Jim might know a little more because that was a few years ago.
It's an unbalanced roundabout. It's not a single lane. It's single lane on, I think, 2 out of the 4 quadrants.
That's what I thought, that's why I'm
So-
asking the
So
question.
there's
Yep.
2 lanes if you're going from northbound 169 to northbound 169, there's 2 lanes.
Yeah.
Actually, I take that back. It's a 3 or single lane and only 2 there's 2 that go from 169 to 37. So-
Yes, that's where it
Yep.
shows two.
Yep, so we
Okay.
call that an unbalanced roundabout. This one would only have a single
Okay.
circulating lane.
So I have a question about that then. How does that impact our emergency service vehicles then? Will it have any impact?
Well, they will be able to get through, you know, from a design stance, right? They'll still be able to get through like they do here. You know, as far as getting through, you know, they're obviously gonna have to slow down for the roundabout, but there's pros and cons that come with it. And I know we talked with emergency services, we go through this. I mean, some of the pros are, it's everybody's slowing down when you're coming there. So I know a lot of times we hear this in other communities too, when emergency services come up to a signal, right? They pretty much come to a stop because they don't know what the traffic's gonna do. Or traffic, like, even if they're following them, like traffic is kind of, okay, do I go through, do I not? Or with the roundabout, it's just, they kind of are a little more easily navigable with the other traffic in there. So that's what we've heard from, you know, other communities as we went through, and I know that the fire chief was involved. I know the police chief was involved with some of the meetings as well to just kind of bring up, you know, what we have through there. So it's,
And if there is one that's better than the other, right, as far as emergency services? There's one location to have a roundabout is better than another down the way on 169, right, on the Beltline?
yep.
Is that-
We try to, you know, one of the things which was a concern here and why we looked at, you know, with the roundabouts was, you know, the fact that you have some longer fire trucks, right, and some fire apparatuses that go through here, right? So I know that was a concern brought up, and we'd have to, you know, work through that. You know, as far as what the intersection control types, you know, like I always said, we try to find the right tool for the, you know, for the intersection on there, and they'll be able to accommodate, you know, whatever needs to get through there for equipment and whatnot, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I'm gonna keep going through these, just like I said, as we go through. The next one was at 15th Street, and with this one, we looked at, and I will say, we looked at on all these multiple alternatives, right? It wasn't like we just came to one. So this we looked at is a median closure here at 15th, just for for the safety benefit that provides.
When we look at something like this closure, would this be done like in tandem with the roundabout above it on the 13th Street, or could this be done sooner?
That's a good question. It kind of depends on what we would have for funding, right? So maybe that gets into stealing my thunder at the end, right? So we don't have any funding for this project, right? So it would depend on what we would go after for funding, right? You know, something like this is a lower cost thing that we would probably ramp in with, you know, something else on there. There's a potential maybe we would do, you know, on there. We have to figure out a funding strategy, right? So that's where what Jesse brought up originally is trying to get an agreement between MnDOT and the city on, okay, what are we in agreement upon on here? Then we can sit down and figure out a funding strategy and how to, you know, get capital dollars to actually do something on here.
Okay.
So, and the reason we are looking at this so early is because, you know, this stuff takes time to all work its way out, right? So it's not like we're gonna be doing this next summer for a closure. Well, I guess it'd be great if we could, right, on some of this stuff, but, yeah, I don't see that reality happening. We'll go down to the next intersection, which is Howard Street. So the recommendation from this was to put a single lane roundabout in here. The one thing that we would be doing just with the roundabout, it would be getting rid of this free right that comes in here. So have everybody coming through the roundabout to make that. I know we've been just across the district as a whole getting rid of those free rights because it's just, people don't slow down, it's other conflict points, and it just, I know there's always confusion when you come to these merge points right about in this area here with these free rights. So everybody would be coming into the roundabout and going out. The next was the meeting here at the hotel. So the recommendation here would be a closure as well. So one thing we did look at too, and that's part of this whole process, was the intersections and the corridor as a whole, right? And we melded those together. One of the things by looking at this with the roundabout recommendation, say at Howard, is if this is closed, you can go up and just make a U-turn at the roundabout that's a little bit up there. So from a safety stance, you clean up a point that has conflict points and potential for crashes, and you're having a solution there that's just to the north by, you know, a few hundred feet that you can easily make a U-turn, come back around and go in, right? So we try to look at those as a intersection and a corridor on there. So just as we go through this, it wasn't just looking at the intersection, you know, independently when we came down to the final recommendations.
I just generally add, some of these are complementary to other, so the roundabout and a closure is complementary. Oh, I'm sorry. Some of these are complementary to each other. The roundabout and a median closure work well together. So you might, if you're gonna partition off how you do the project, you might tie them together, the ones that are complementary.
All right, the next intersection is 23rd, and as you can see, this says to be determined. So this is one that when we work through the process, this is an existing signal system out there right now. The existing signal does not meet warrants to stay in there, right? So no matter what, we would be doing something when it goes to replace this signal. And I know we've looked at, a roundabout here or a J-turn, which is on the right side, and looking at what the different options are here. So there was some back and forth on, trying to get emergency service equipment out of here and looking at some options there. And this is, I think, one that, between us and the city, I think there's still some work to do on figuring out what that recommendation would be. So that's why we, as part of the study, came into, okay, there's a couple options here that still some work needs to happen on that. So I don't know, Jesse, if there's, I think that's kind of where we left this one, right?
Yeah, Mayor Council, we've talked about this one before, this intersection. I don't support the J-turns, I support a roundabout there, just because we'll have all of our public safety, all of our city equipment comes out of that intersection. So, and that's been relayed to MnDOT.
So,
If we move on, talk a little bit about that process, if you would, because our equipment, so because we just okayed that buyout of St. Louis County, MnDOT's our partner on that. We have a lot of big equipment going through there. We talked about this intersection for 2 years now, or whatever it's been. Talk about the process when it comes to a decision being made on what that intersection looks like. Because I thought we came to the conclusion that it would be a roundabout or a light, but now we have a J-turn, and we've talked to our fire department about the length of equipment that we have, which they'll be using that extensively. So talk about that a little bit, because I want to know now what that looks like.
Yep. Good question. And it, you know, really what it's gonna come down to is we just need to have some more discussions, you know, to figure out what, from a geometry side, you know, I think when we look at it and the proximity of the roundabouts that spoiler, the next intersection's a roundabout as well, is the proximity of that and the Howard roundabout. And, you know, from an actual, from what the traffic numbers say, the safety numbers, it's more conducive to have a J-turn there, just because you have two options that are very close for U-turns and whatnot there. That's from, you know, looking at it from a MnDOT side of things, but knowing that, you know, there's still gonna have to be some more discussions, because the other thing is with the new facility going in and everything else, you know, as we were looking at this, is there gonna be other changes there, other equipment changes that might have to garner some differences through this intersection. So I think some of it's gonna come into once that's underway and we get a little more feedback on that we'll be sitting back down and going through that process.
Feedback from who? Because we've been providing the feedback for 2 years on what our preference is there. Jesse, I think you probably summarized it a lot smoother than I have, but the point is, I'm very concerned that we've got two options here. Everything else has, you know, a variation, but this J-turn just will not work for us. What we were asking for you to do, Alex, was look at that intersection through our lens. I understand the stacking distance, and those two cul-de-sacs or those two roundabouts are very close in proximity. From an engineering standpoint, maybe I don't know exactly what that means, but from a standpoint of equipment that has to roll through there, whether that's fire or public works, we don't feel like we've been heard.
No, and I understand that, and that's where I think, where I said there's two options right now, and this is where we want to get into a memo of understanding of just, this might be one where we just can't come to an agreement at this time, right? And I'm not saying that that's not gonna, you know, completely stop conversations between MnDOT and the city and figure out, you know, maybe one of, you know, maybe there's another option here that gets done, maybe a roundabout, maybe a J, you know, but it's just at this point, especially when we don't have funding for anything out here, nothing's gonna happen very quickly on that. But yeah, that's kind of why we wanted to get in front of the council here, just to, you know, talk through these and figure out, okay, we can't come to an agreement on this one at this time. What can we come to an agreement upon, and, you know, continue discussions on that.
Just one question, as it's going through, I guess, and this is just might be me, but I think from our last discussion, it feels like, you're, not you guys solely, but you're here telling us what's gonna happen, but you want our input, but you don't really want our input. I mean, is that accurate? Like, when it comes to it, the input that we give, you're gonna hear it, but you're still gonna do what you guys wanna do in the end.
No, for this one, not really. I mean, what we're wanting to do is, you know, we look at this from all the different perspectives, right? And so this is a study recommendation that was based off the study, right? And we try to look at what is the best solution for this, right? And knowing that the city is gonna have cost implications on all of these, right? There's gonna be some. Now, we also can't go through and, you know, if the study recommendation is a J-turn, right? We have to look, you know, long and hard on, okay, do we do something else on there, right? Because if we're getting the same benefits with a different you know, with the J-turn as we would a roundabout, okay, then how do we work through the functionality of some of the other concerns that the city has? You know, we do that with roundabouts up here. One of the big things are, you know, we always hear that with the roundabouts is, okay, how do you get mine equipment through, right? So that's a design thing that we have to work through and go through a little more of a process to get those through, right? So that's, you know, to be said, it's, like I said, where I think we just need more discussion on that. That's probably out of this. And I will say the other thing is, we're more than likely not going to be able to do this whole corridor at once, right, as one big project. We also know that, you know, as far as prioritization on which one we would start at, we would probably not be starting at 23rd as a prioritization of all the intersections on there. Just because we know from a safety stance and just operational existing, signal stance, we're probably starting at, one of the other intersections that are on there. So, like I said, it's more discussion, I think, is warranted on that, just to, keep trying to, come to an agreement on there, so.
I guess my question is, and I raised it at the very beginning regarding the emergency vehicles. Hearing this, what implications does that have on our new public safety building moving forward? Because we're ready to go. So does everyone feel confident that it's going to be a certain way and you're going to design the building accordingly and have the access routes as you would want them? Or are you kind of hesitant right now?
Counselor, great question, and that is the debate. I know we've talked internally as staff multiple times, probably 10, just about the study and what it looks like, up to and including public safety, especially our fire department. I don't think it'll change the design of the building itself. It certainly will change the traffic flow for us because a J-turn, and Eric, you'll have to correct me on lengths of equipment that we have, but a J-turn with our largest fire apparatus will be a struggle to get through that J-turn.
Yeah, when we had these discussions with MnDOT and the group settings, that's our biggest concern, whether it's this potentially being a J-term or even 31st Street with the potential of putting a housing development up on top of the hill up there, being 31st being an access point for a new housing development. The J-turn's going to be problematic even there for incoming units to come from across the highway to take these 50-foot long trucks and try to make that crossover support thing. So we voiced that stuff to the dozen number of meetings that we've had, but so we keep it on our radar. But yeah, our new truck that we just ordered is going to be 51 or 52 feet long. So. And it turns on a football field. So the turning radiuses are super sharp on them, so.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just add in, like I said, with any of these that we do, I mean, you can even see on this configuration, with any of those turning movements, we model what the design vehicle is. So in this case, we would get the exact design vehicle that goes through and make sure it can get through the intersection, right? So we have what's called, I think they still call them this, loon heads that are here. So when they're actually making a turning movement, like any vehicle of the size that we would need to come through would be able to swing out and actually make that turning movement. So we would go through as part of the final design process of, okay, what is the vehicles that are going through here to make sure they can get through the intersections.
And you do remember that when we did our heat mapping, our fire responses are most of the time, and Eric, you'll have to remind me what the percentages are in the core downtown area. So what that does, it will also increase our response times. Eric?
So when we did the heat studies, the core part of our actual structure fire is within a 10-block radius of this building. So it's the oldest infrastructure in the city. It's the tightest knit construction of all the buildings. So historically, the number of fires that we have in relation to the rest of the city is higher within this 10-block radius. So a J-turn in those particular environments, yeah, a truck might fit, but if we have to turn right to go onto the 169, even if we're going to go out towards Walmart or one of those things, it's going to add a couple of minutes to a response time to go down the highway to come back and to double up and come back. Roundabouts will get us through directly across and or right and left without any time lags, actually probably faster than the controlled light intersection.
Mayor Council, what I was looking at with this was, we have 9 graders, we'll have 2 plow trucks, if we have 2 sanders, all our dump trucks for picking up snow. So if we're picking up snow on 23rd Street, I don't believe there's any way that we can get all of those on the highway to the other lane do a J-turn with all that equipment to get across the highway. It does not make sense to me. And that's what I've said from the beginning.
So maybe I'm getting a little far ahead of the conversation, but is the answer to this figuring out a different option for the other two intersections so we don't have 3 roundabouts right in a row? Is that the answer?
That's more of a traffic engineering question, probably. I mean, I understand what we do here impacts 2 other intersections. The reason I'm bringing it up now is I don't want to be sitting here in 6 years or 8 years when we've got funding, having MnDOT say, here's what we're doing. Oh, we forgot. I mean, I want to be on record that we oppose this. I think it's very important to our community. We can talk about the funding later, but the point is I want us to be heard on this because we've asked for a thing and I don't think it's going to happen.
From the traffic engineering perspective, I believe that, I think it was modeled, I mean, we do show that a roundabout will work. So don't get me wrong, it will work. I guess I just want to add, and that maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but I think when we were putting this together, I think there was some question if the new public safety building was a sure thing at the time. To a certain degree, I know that Jesse's concerns were valid, and so I guess I would say that that's why there's 2 options, because we haven't come to a conclusion yet. So we're not saying that it's one or the other. I think they're both options. They work, but in various ways for both parties. So I think that's exactly why we say we haven't made a decision here. This is not a recommendation of the study to have one or the other. I think the other ones we've generally come to a conclusion through the process that these are probably the best solutions.
So I guess to answer my question, does that change that at all? If the answer for us was, we agree with roundabout 1 and 2, but now we want one in the middle, does that change your engineering?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think the other ones stand independently on their own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we did look at this as a corridor, right? So yeah, Jim is right. Thanks for bringing that up. But yeah, we did, so that's why both of them are still on the table, right? I mean, if it was something that could not work, we definitely wouldn't have that in there.
And when you look at the roundabouts, every one of these places except for the one going down 13, there's a stoplight. So, I mean, you're doing stop and start anyways, and I think you just mentioned that it can actually be faster, and Eric just mentioned that, Chief had just said that too. The roundabout can actually be faster. And we're not changing the kind of the speed of flow because those are all stoplights anyways. So now you have continual movement if timing is right for everybody. And, it's like some days you hit the lights perfect, you hit everyone. Otherwise, next day you miss everyone. So you're sitting there waiting for 2-3 minutes every time you stop. So I don't think it's a question of 3 roundabouts in a row in a short, because I've seen it in other areas of the state where that has been the case. And you just keep moving. It's just the way it is, so.
Any other questions on this one for right now, at least? Okay. We'll just keep working through here quick. There we go. So 25th, recommendation here is a roundabout with some frontage road realignment. This is one of those, like I said, that we'll have to work through on, what exactly does that frontage road realignment look like? How do you can see the closure here, of the frontage road, how does that look? So there's some different options that we looked at. That's all final design stuff, or, even a little before that on how that goes. But this would be the overall intersection concept for 25th.
Yeah. One question, make sure I'm looking at this
Yep.
correctly. All of the blue lines are the bike or pedestrian paths, is that correct?
Yep, and those are, once again, it's a conceptual layout, but yes, the blue would be there, the red would be, like a concrete median, similar to like on the roundabout you guys have of, the splitter island, we call it, of how you split traffic, but yep, good question.
And these would all be surface, there's no design that would have above the double lane?
Correct.
bike bridge or
Yep, all
pedestrian bridge.
surface. All right, I'm gonna keep moving. One thing we looked at is the weird area by Gray Drive and the frontage road here. Just with what we had here, we just said there's really no reason to touch it at this time. So we just leave as is. The next one was at the Lee's access here, and the study recommendation off of this was to close the median through here. 31st, this is one that we looked at, and the J-turn was the study recommendation for this intersection. I should say, one concept that we did show, which would be a city potential is, do you want to extend the frontage road on the west side here to kind of tie up with, what is it, 35th? 34th on there. So that's another option. I know we showed throughout the process on there. It wouldn't be a MnDOT-led thing, but if the city would, if they considered it, that was one thing we did look at through the process.
One question about this connection.
Yep.
If a housing development on top of the Highland Park is gonna use that as an entryway, how does that increased traffic affect these J-turns? Is that still well within the limit then?
That was, we did know about that housing development, so that was included in our numbers when we were looking at the, I don't know if Alex mentioned, but we had a consultant do all this analysis, so we did ask them, and they included that development in the traffic volume numbers, so rest assured that when we say it will work, it does include those
Okay.
expanded numbers.
Thank you.
The next intersection here is 37th. The recommendation was a roundabout with some, potential frontage road reconfigurations. This is just an example of what those configurations could be. There's a bunch of different options here that we looked at for cul-de-sacing stuff, having stuff come out. So this is one, I think, very much so that we'd be, early on looking with the city on, how do we, want to reconfigure some of those frontage road areas through here. And I think this is the oldest signal that we have through the corridor, right, Jim?
Yes, this is well beyond its design life, and we would very much like to replace, well, I would say replace, take it out and do something there, whether it needs to be replaced, or take it removed, I should say, and this is what we're thinking for the next step.
The final area we looked at was at 39th, and once again, this is a median closure, especially with bookend roundabouts. It really makes sense for a closure where you can just go and make a U-turn at the roundabouts through there. So we did look, just because, I think somebody mentioned the travel time, hey, if you hit all greens, great. If you hit reds, it's different. And so we did do a travel time analysis, and I don't know, Jim.
Yeah, I'll do a high-level go at this, because when we looked at it, we said, wow, that's a lot of roundabouts. What does that mean if you're traveling through the corridor? And so we had our consultant look at that. So what it really means is those top numbers, the top boxes are kind of the existing, how long it takes you to travel the corridor during peak times. So 5.5 minutes roughly northbound and southbound. We looked at the future, and then we looked at the off-peak time. So if you got all greens in the middle of the night, it takes you about 3 minutes. So then we said, well, we recommend a lot of roundabouts. What does that mean? Well, actually, with the recommended roundabouts during peak times, you're gonna get through the corridor faster. It's roughly a minute shorter. At free fall, so in the middle of the night, it's gonna take about a minute longer. But so that, you're right, Mayor, that it really was, our analysis showed that during peak times, it's actually a faster trip. Non-peak times, maybe a little bit slower, but generally speaking, those roundabouts are gonna keep things flowing on the corridor.
Overall, this is just a quick slide on just what our schedule was. So this goes up through now, and the biggest thing is the implementation of this, right? So this gets to the questions on, okay, how is this going to get implemented and when, right? So right now, we don't have this in anywhere of our 4 or 10-year plans on there. Some of the processes, okay, first we need to figure out what it is, before it goes in, and then we can start looking for, money to do it. from a stance of, just ending up just generally in our capital highway improvement plan, which is our 10-year plan. Most of those projects are based off of pavement condition, right? So, we just did our project through here in, was it 2017, I think, the mill and overlay. So right now, it's not triggering anything as far as that goes. That doesn't mean we're not gonna try to get something here, but it's probably gonna end up being some sort of special funding that would happen with that. So just kind of overall on our next steps is, we've worked on, and just the consultant did this, and it's still something we're gonna be working with the city on, is, prioritization of the corridor needs, right? To figuring out, okay, how do we prioritize this? We're probably not gonna get the whole thing at once. I think overall it was, I don't have it in front of me, but $18 million of capital construction costs to do. There's probably not a chance we're gonna get all that at once, but there's a chance we can probably, start checking off some of the intersections. So, from an intersection perspective, okay, how do we prioritize which ones, happen first? And we'll be continuing to work with the city on, okay, this is kind of the game on what we've, our game plan that we've thought of for us. And I think we've, even through the process, I know Jesse's, I think, seen that too, just on a high level on what that would be. But we work on, and I think this is where it comes into my bottom here, is just a kind of a memo of understanding with the council on, hey, here's the intersections that we can agree upon right now, and that way we can move forward on actually going after funding. And one of the things that we did, or that the city did put in for, so a recent program came up through the state of Minnesota, actually through MnDOT, which MnDOT can't apply for, but locals can, is the Corridors of Commerce Readiness Funds. So that funding is meant to work on preliminary design, which we would need to do, final design, environmental, anything to get ready for a future project on there. So the city did submit for that, and that would be to one aspect of where we continue these discussions, right, is getting into a tangible, hey, we have money to do something here, so now let's look at this. So that got submitted, I think, a couple of weeks ago. It's going through the process right now. I think the selections are made, and I'm pulling this off the top of my head, but we'll just say late summer, early fall, sometime on when we would be notified if this was one of the items across the state that would be selected. As part of this, the city would need to have a letter of support to support, going through with, doing the readiness funds on there. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the, working together to get a memo of understanding of, hey, we're in agreement on, these intersections. Maybe we still need to work on, the one, but that at least gives us a clear path forward, so it doesn't hold up everything, right? We don't want to get in a spot where, okay, we can't agree on one, so we can't agree on the whole. We can agree on certain things, and we would work together with trying to get what that, resolution would look like in front of the council. But that would be the goal of that. It would help solidify a little bit too on, prioritization of funding for some of that as well that we could add in there. Just quick for everybody's knowledge, and even in the public, if you want to find out more, we have our webpage on here. I would say Google MnDOT Hibbing is probably the easiest way to do it. It'll probably be one of the first couple links that you would find to get there. But that's probably the best way to find. Otherwise, here's a webpage address to find out all this information's online. And yeah, just overall, thank you all, and we're here for questions as well to go through. Yep.
I just got one more question, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with this project, but, so this is from the current roundabout north.
Mm-hmm.
What about from the current roundabout west? So we still have several lights on that end of town then?
Well, we haven't got there yet, so we
Well, we haven't got here yet.
We had a little bit of, we had some limited funding, and we were able to, I actually wanted to do the whole thing from, when the 73 comes up all the way out, and we couldn't cut that with our funding, so we had to pick what our priority was, and we prioritized this north-south segment because of when I earlier talked about intersections with crash problems that were near the critical crash rate. The primary ones were on the north-south corridor. I think there are some on the east-west, but just to say we haven't got there. They're not forgotten, but the east-west is not on the docket right now.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a good point, Jim. Yeah, to do this study, we did receive some special funding to do that, right? So typically, we wouldn't even start looking at this until it's in our 10-year plan. So, just by knowing what the situation is out there, we were able to get special money to get this far on that, so.
Well, does, any other questions from the counselors? I appreciate your presentation tonight, and I think it was great discussion, and I think we've moved forward in certain areas and agreed, and there's a couple that, well, maybe one for sure that we have some question on, but that was probably it. I mean, a lot of it makes sense, and it's just the direction everybody's going. I mean, look at the maintenance cost of lighting systems versus a roundabout. My biggest concern is just making sure a roundabout is big enough to handle our mining industry so our economy doesn't get affected in our design. So that's my biggest concern.
And I will add that when we do roundabouts, those were conceptual, but we do
Yep.
pick the design vehicle, and the Hibbing roundabout here was designed, maybe not to get it was designed with mining in mind, and it might not take the roundabout in the traditional sense, but we knew there was a way to get vehicles through it. And if you think about the Chisholm roundabout, how it's kind of odd shaped, that was designed specifically for the mining equipment. So when we do get into the actual design, mining equipment will certainly be a factor of what it looks like.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, we'll move on to, and Sheena, are you leading this, or is Greg leading the financial management plan update?
I think, Greg, did you want to kick off the financial management plan?
Sure, so remember, we're trying to put together a financial management plan, you know, a couple of the steps. How much stuff do we have, what's needs, what's wants, prioritization. It's a fairly large project. The need is substantial. You may even have a little bit of sticker shock, but don't let that scare you, because what we haven't done yet is kind of nailed down all of those projects and all of those needs. But what's really important is the direction was a 10-year horizon for all of this stuff. We know that's not realistic. We needed a place to start. We want to be in that 25 to 30-year time horizon for these projects. So we'll have a chance to like flatten that out and make some improvements so it's a little bit more cost effective. But I won't spend a lot of time. Sheena, I think I'll just kick it back to you, and then you can kind of start going through the details.
Sure. So we acquired Planet. It's a capital planning software. Everybody should have a packet that I handed out this evening. It says 2025 through 2034 capital improvement plan. That would be the 10 years. We asked all of the department heads to put in their requests or their needs for the next 10 years, or to turn it into us so we could put it into the software. So this would have a year-over-year summary of totals by department. It doesn't get into the project specifics because that would be a really, really long document. So we just wanted to do a high-level summary at this time to show you year by year and which departments they belong to. So you'll see the total for the 10 years at the end. It's not really realistic that in 1 year, you know, we have like a $37 or $50 million spend. So now we're starting to look at drilling down and phasing out what we're going to do and prioritize year over year of this plan. So then on the next page, that's where staff met and we started talking about, these are projects that are not routine in nature. They're not like our regular paving projects. They're not our regular equipment replacement schedules. They're not enterprise fund projects, which we pay for with rates right now. They don't include things like economic development and housing projects that Betsy's trying to seek outside funding for. They're more of things like the deferred maintenance we addressed on our buildings, things like the public safety building that we're already starting and got funding for. So you'll see that just these projects alone have a really large price tag in total. So as staff, we looked at kind of what we think is the highest priority for the funding as we work through the plan. But we really wanted to bring this to the city council to get feedback on what your thoughts are as far, and have some conversations on what the highest priorities are, where the money should be spent first if we're going to try to phase the plan out over a period of time. So Greg, did you want to add something on the specific projects that we talked about?
Sure, so it's not all-inclusive. There's other stuff that's probably kind of hanging out there. Things like streets, it's not on here, but we know that needs to be done. We tried to capture roughly priority order, some stuff that's already in progress, we need to finish up, some stuff that's probably a higher priority because like this building isn't dried in yet. We just have a lot of stuff to do. So we're just looking for some feedback, number one, on those projects and kind of giving you an update on where we're at and maybe some direction on next steps.
I think it's nice to see the priorities and the dollar amount attached to it. I'm almost wondering if this would be beneficial to share on our website so the taxpayers can see what the, what it will cost.
And I think that is the intention. We would like to have it shined up a little bit more, though. It's just,
sure.
It's such a short time frame right now. We just
Right.
want to be able to smooth it out, get our arms around what the annual spend is anticipated to be, and then we would finalize that plan, and then we would certainly put it out on our website for the public to see.
Curious what the deferred maintenance on the memorial building, that priority 9 is, a little more specifically.
I'll probably have Nick end up, or maybe Jesse, but that came right out of the ICS study, I think.
Do you have the detail, Sheena, on it? I don't
There's a-
have what you're looking at, so.
The packet is right there. It's the big number of pretty much everything that was left over from the highest priorities.
14.9.
Yeah.
So life safety, roofs,
The number 9.
That was a combination of a little bit of everything. Plumbing, upgrades, code upgrades, electrical, just a general refresh of the entire building. That was ice plant, that was dehumidification, that was new boards, glass, everything. Basically, an all-inclusive. If we want to stay in this building for the next 25 years, we gotta address some things.
That was actually
And a
my hope, was that it
refresh.
included all of the ice plant and everything,
Yep.
so that was,
Correct.
that's what I was looking for.
And that was on the study,
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a new arena in the old arena.
What's that? I'm
It's a
sorry.
new arena in the old arena. You
The
got the
new
house,
arena?
you got the house, memorial building, right? We're putting 14 million into it, right? So it's like we're gonna have a brand new arena, essentially.
Brand new one sheet arena is running 24 to 25 million right now.
So we're getting a new one for 14.
Yeah.
It's a savings,
Pretty happy.
Another
See,
savings, look
there
at all
we
the money
go.
we're saving.
another savings.
Great.
Well, definitely, prioritizing and phasing is the two key words, what we're doing here. And it has to match our financial budget forecast as we move forward. But it is a nice, you've addressed many needs that we've talked about for years, and now we have it on a worksheet. So we can strive, just like our 10-year strategic plan and comprehensive plan, we have something to work off of to match those two components.
Nice job.
The last piece would be the last page, page number 3. I went through and I created a list of the last 7 years for the city. It includes just for the council's perspective, so you can see what our taxable net tax capacity is for the city, what our rates have been, what we've certified for our levy, how much we got in fiscal disparities to adjust from our levy, what the net levy was, and then also what our local government aid allocation was year over year. As I'm trying to build this financial management plan, obviously everything from our operating deficit to our debt service levy, all of those things roll up into what our tax levy will be and what our rate is for our taxpayers. So I guess just looking for some feedback or some direction as far as, and we're also gonna be starting the 2026 budgeting season as well, is where the council likes to see the tax rate and the levy increases at, so that we can have some direction as far as how much money we can allocate towards the capital plan year over year. In addition to that, with some of the large spend up front with the public safety building, and then any of the deferred maintenance that we do on the public works facility, if we do some CIP bonding, we will see a debt service levy increase to pay for that, for the bonding to pay it back. So that'll be something that'll also be built into the capital, or to the financial management plan as well.
Are you guys asking for feedback on this second page on what to prioritize? Well, most of it's, I mean, the last two, obviously, the campground's on the back burner and rec center seems like a dream right now. But all the other ones are public safety building and just keeping these three buildings from falling apart and getting them back up to snuff, so
And we did debate these internally a lot. How we captured it, we made some assumptions. I mean, stuff that's in progress has to be ahead of anything that's not started.
Turn on your microphone.
It is on. Hello? I know, this one's not working.
Yeah, that one gives feedback when he has it on.
So, little bit of science, we think we're in the ballpark. And it's a living document, it'll change over time, it just will. Priorities will change, money in or out, so.
You know, the one thing that's not reflected in here is outside funding sources, which we're turning over every rock to find right now. I mean, this reflects what the costs are. It doesn't reflect bonding, it doesn't reflect our RRRB requests, it doesn't reflect county collaboration. I mean, there's many different factors that are not included, but at least we know what to work towards right now. And you know, if we had no funding coming in to help support these projects, we know exactly what it would cost our residents. And that's why I said prioritizing and phasing is so important moving forward as we look at everything we have here. And but the list, as Councilor Whitney just said, it's a great list. And a lot of it is the things that just that had been neglected for how many years, and other is how, you know, you got to balance repairing what you have and moving forward to the future. And we, you know, and I think that's why it's important that we've had a strategic plan, why we've had a comprehensive plan, and we've taken a, you know, I think a fantastic approach with this council to move forward. So,
Question about, kind of related to this, when do we start receiving payments from the sales tax?
June, it'll be, so the first monthly filing will be May 20th, and then the turnaround time is about 30 days from the state. The first one, they will withhold administrative fees for the state to initiate the program, and then after that, we'll be seeing monthly payments after that.
Okay, we'll be able to see what the total amount was either way, right, just so we can start forecasting maybe future payoff amounts, right, like how much we're actually gonna, how long it's gonna take to actually get to our goal. So I'm just curious. I'm actually really excited. I get really excited to see the extra 5 cents on my receipt. I'm like, yes, we're paying for this thing.
I do too. I'm like, they did it. They put it on their seat. One thing on the 2024 for this 7-year listing of the tax rates, you'll see that it went from 2023 to 94.83% was our tax rate, down to 77.5. That's because our taxable net tax capacity went up significantly by over $2 million. We also know as a city that a lot of that has to do with residential market values that have been increasing due to sales prices. So even though the tax rate has come down, we do know that it's shifted from the commercial industry to the residential. So there's that part of it in the factor too.
any other questions for Sheena or Greg?
Or feedback on anything.
I really like this,
Yeah.
just to have it in front of us and see all of the things that we have coming down the line is great. I would love for some of the things near the bottom of the priority list to be higher, but the things that are above that are all necessary, so. I think you guys did a great job putting the information together. I appreciate that.
Right, I'd like to say it's a short list of our priorities, but it includes everything, and it's a long list. But you look at some of the other things that are in the capital improvement plan, that also could be coming down the road, right? Like you've got the bus museum and the raceway and other stuff that we have. It's just really gonna need investment after this short list.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on then. We'll move on to Hibbing Public Library Board Ordinance.
I don't know if you want to talk about this again, because I think we talked about it
Okay,
enough.
very good.
Thank you.
Kind of been decided already, right?
All right.
It's already been
So
decided.
this is tied into the same thing, very good.
If we were gonna modify the ordinance
Yep.
by the number, Mayor, that was, I think, the discussion.
Very good.
Thanks.
All right, then let's move on to the City Hall window project update, and that would be you, Mr. Aroa. Nick, you'll be presenting then.
Yep.
I got you one.
Circling back around on the City Hall windows. We met internally a little bit, and we have it narrowed down to two things. We got some more clarification from the State Historic Preservation Office. And so with their recommendation, they are recommending the Marvin window for this building to stay historically accurate and to use their funding and to use the IRRR funding currently, we would have to follow their recommendation, which would be a Marvin window, which would be a wood window. It would have to be white to match the historic 1920s architecture. So it would not match what's currently on the west side. There's a lot of ongoing maintenance with those, since it would be have to be painted, and a lot of extra maintenance in the next every 4 to 5 years. You're going to have to look at that. And versus if we went with the H window, which is on the other side or the west side of the building currently, if we matched that up and paid for that entire the other 3 sides by ourselves, is the price there. We would have to give up those grants. So that's kind of the breakdown of what we're looking at currently as staff. We've kind of gone the route that we would give up the grants and go after the H window. I can't see us spending that amount of money to put in a wood window. That's going to require more maintenance, more upkeep for us, and cost us more in the long run anyway. So our recommendation would be the H window, even if we have to phase it over a couple of years, but we do it. We wouldn't get anything in this year. We would start next year, next spring. We'd have to allocate a little more money on the city side, but that would be our recommendation. We are still going to try and go after the IRRR and see if they would be willing to adjust their requirements, because right now they're saying whatever SHPO says is what we're following. But maybe they can adjust their rules and still allow us to get the funding from them. So we're hopeful on that, but our recommendation would be to go with the H window and move forward that way. Open for questions if anybody has anything.
Nick, I think the H windows on the west have done a great job, and the reason I started the project that way is because the county went 100% H windows on all their county buildings. So they made a great choice. I followed their lead. They also have historic buildings. Our high school has an aluminum-based window on the front with a wood interior, and which met SHPO when they did the high school, but doesn't match a same era building with the same architecture. But I just don't see, the one thing everybody tries to move towards to is maintenance-free with quality, which an H window is. Certainly, we don't want to get into a situation where every 5 years we're repainting all these windows.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense with modern technology and something that can look right.
And we have, between Betsy and the mayor, I know we've made our legislatures, our representatives, I should say, aware of this and the SHPO requirements, so we can hopefully, maybe change this process in the future, and, they can see it from our side of the table. We're trying to preserve a historic building, but putting in a wood window that we're gonna have more maintenance long-term is just, it's not realistic in the city government side, so, hopefully they can, see our side too and change things, but right now, they're not willing to budge off of the Marvin window, so.
This is similar to mandates with no funding to back
Correct.
it. That's kind of what it's like.
Yep.
I think, right, I think it is just ridiculous that we have to give up almost $1 million in grants just because we want to save money, with something that actually would still meet the other windows on the building. Yeah, I don't get it.
I have a question. Is this an all-at-once project, or is there a phasing?
This is all at once right now, but if we're gonna have to pay more, we've talked about phasing, yeah, if we need to. If we don't have the fund balance to do it all in one shot, then we would have to phase it. But yeah, we haven't figured that out quite internally. I think we had $1 million this year for capital. So we'd carry that over to next year, that $1 million over to next year, and then we'd have to allocate more or phase it to a following year, to 27 or whatever. So yeah, we do have $1 million right now allocated for this project, so.
If you did something this year, and I know we're not, you basically just said that, what does that get the front of the building? I mean, what would that pay for in today's dollars?
At least two sides.
Okay.
For sure. I can't remember. I believe it'd be the front, well, we could pick. I mean, either the south or the north, probably the north I would do. The north and probably the east.
Yep.
But yeah, if you guys are in agreement with the H window, we would start the process to get shop drawings done, get everything going to have it bid this winter and get going right away next spring. So kind of the timeline.
Okay. So you would be bringing that to the council then? You're just looking for direction, of course, that's what you can do at this working session. So you'll be bringing something to the council with an official request?
Yes, I can. Yep, we have Adolphson and Peterson, we have them as the construction manager for this, we approved that. So we would work with them and with Seth to get the final drawings complete, final specs, and then we would bring that back to you for approval to go out to bid.
Yeah, that's all I was asking.
Yeah.
Yep, very good.
Yep.
All right, anything else, counselors? Anything for Mr. Rolla? Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
HRA, Hibbing Wasabi Manor project. No?
Defer that.
Okay, that's gone. All right, in that point, then, we go to roundtable discussion. So, Greg, we start with you.
One thing, if you will. Jesse, MnDOT, this corridor study, was there a last step where we provide our comments formally to them in writing, or have we done that?
No, that's what he talked about at the end, is they'll do a memo of understanding inserted into the final draft. So we need to have our comments in that memo to present to them.
Okay,
to have that in there.
so we write the memo, we submit to them.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Last thing I'll mention on this, and then I'll let it go. The reason that I push them on this is because they will do exactly what Counselor Schweigerberger said. They will give you what they want if we don't stand up and tell them what it is and why. Here's an opportunity for us to influence an outcome. There are many other things, as you can see on my sheet, that I don't agree with, that we need to nail down. I don't want to lose this opportunity. So, then also I asked Eric to give us a report real quick, if you would, Eric.
Evening, Mayor and Council. A quick brief report. I spoke to the administrator and the mayor happened to be at another joint meeting a week or so ago, is that the city of Nashwauk is dissolving their ambulance service. And it's being taken over by a quasi Tasca County, city of Nashwauk venture, and we were asked to submit a bid to take the service over. They solicited bids from a number of regional players, including Grand Rapids, Essentia Health over in Deer River, et cetera. And looking over the bid requirements and some of the different nuances, my recommendation to the administrator and when I was speaking with the mayor was, I do not believe it is in the best interest of the city to do this. I don't think it's in the best interest of our organization to do this. We certainly don't want the Nashwauk area residents in that service area to be without an ambulance service. We're pretty confident there are going to get some bidders in there, but with the requirement of putting, they want us to put a truck in that city, it would take 6 extra people. We don't have the run, the staffing to do it. The run volume is high, but the run volume's not enough to sustain a revenue funding. They are going to do a taxing district with some of the townships and stuff that are out there to provide some extra funding that revenue doesn't recapture, but knowing what their demographics are, knowing what their run volume are, my personal opinion is after doing the arithmetic on it, at best, we're break even, maybe a little bit better. And we don't see it being an economically viable thing for us, and certainly something that we as a city or as an organization would benefit from. So the mayor thought, and the administrator appropriately thought it was to just in case you guys got any questions, or in case you were to get questions from somewhere out in that realm. But we do have to do they just wanted us to do a formal response whether we were interested in bidding or not interested in bidding. And so prior to just simply putting something on a piece of letterhead saying we're just thanks for the opportunity, we're declining to bid, we felt that it was important to at least get in front of you just for 5 minutes and just give you a quick update of that stuff. There's a pile of information. I'll be happy to share some of the stuff with you, but the simple arithmetic just doesn't show a long-term value to the city. So if you have any questions or anything.
Councilors, any questions? Thank you, Eric.
So.
Okay, well, that's good. Greg?
That's all I
Okay.
have, thank you.
Tyler?
I don't think I have anything. I'm open for questions. Oh, yes. So today we met about the citywide cleanup.
Yeah.
Beginning of June. Just pretty much it's copy and paste what we did basically.
6th and
last
7th,
year.
I see it's getting
Yeah.
spread on,
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I don't want to say it runs itself because we still need volunteers and
Yeah.
people to help and just a little bit of coordination, but it's a pretty simple process that's available to the residents. And it's just basically making sure that we get everything in order in the next 30 days.
I'm back in town again this year, so.
Perfect. You're not going on a big trip, so
Nope.
we'll take all the help we can get.
Candy?
Yep, I just have one thing. Local board review on Tuesday, 1 o'clock. I have Counselor Whitney, Counselor Bayless, Mayor, and do I have you, Justin, or do I not? Or
Tuesday?
Tuesday at
At
1.
1 PM, right?
It's 1 to 2. Okay, so then I have a quorum. Thank you.
All right,
I'll send a reminder on Monday.
good idea. Councilor Bayless?
I don't have anything to bring up for roundtable specifically, but I do, not to say anything bad about anybody staff-wise, but I do want to give kudos to the fire department. Not to all of our staff for everything you guys do, but the fire department got some comments. I got a phone call about the 7th Avenue fire, and how thankful the residents were that you guys stuck around to get people back down there. That might have been a very small gesture, but that went a long way, and people really appreciated that.
Nice.
Employees at Fairview and community members had really, really nice things to say, so thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
That's all
Thank
I
you.
got.
Great job. Councilor Fossil?
I'm good tonight.
Councilor Schweberger? Good. Okay, I have 2 things. One, I had I've had concerns, reached out to me, residents, about bears and going in our dumpsters. And I was researching, but until I came before the council, I didn't think it was good to move it forward. But I know the DNR has them, and we were working with the DNR and Bear-Wise. We adopted city ordinances for not feeding, wildlife and things. The next step is to try and control bears in the early part of the season when they're looking for food. If we could bring in some of the containers that, like the DNR has, I think they're 3-yard containers that it might be a little cumbersome during a certain time of the year, because I don't know how they actually operate, so we'd have to research that. But they do make them, because I did look it up, and the DNR uses them, that we could put them in trouble spots to make those bears move on. And we don't need them everywhere. We might only need 3, 4, or 5 of them that we just put in place for a short time and then store them after that. But
I think that's what Bear-Wise suggested.
they did suggest that. Now, personally, you should put your garbage in at night, but this is for the big containers, like Southview. That's where some of the complaints are coming from. And they're gonna go to a 5-yard or 3-yard or whatever you have up there.
Yep.
So there's no way they can control that unless our container controls that.
Mayor, if you could send me that info,
Okay.
and then we can price those out and bring it back to council.
Yeah, they were, I think they were about $2,700.
Okay.
They're all metal and, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I will do that. I just wanted the council to know that you guys support that, and I'll work with moving that forward. Then the other thing, and I'm gonna have Betsy come up, I've had numerous recently, cannabis now is moving forward. People are getting their licenses and they're reaching out, and I forwarded them to Ms. Olivanti. And so I think we have to make a decision on our zoning and what we're gonna do, because it's a reality, it's here, it's legal, and people are reaching out, so.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council, there have been about 3 or 4 different parties that have reached out to me about the potential for a micro-grow operation here in the city of Hibbing. And they're asking what our zoning allows for, and currently our zoning only administers to or adjudicates around the public use of it, right? Not actually where they can grow it.
Well, yes and no. I think Mr. Green just needs to get back to me with some feedback, because we passed the ordinance with regard to not just possession, but the other part as well, that you could have as many businesses, industries as you want. That's been passed. It's just where it's going to be zoned. And so about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, we had to do the registration so that the state would send the information to us. When people say they've already got a license, no offense, but I still question whether that's really accurate, because
I know one that does.
they have to literally send that to the city of Hibbing and get it approved before they'll get their license, because they don't have a placement until the city says yes. So,
Correct.
So there's a step that has to be finished there. So I had given the information to Tina to log in to try and create our thing so that the state will send the information to us. So they might have a license, but they don't have a place to go until we tell them to.
And I think that's what they were asking, is that question.
And that's up to our zoning department,
Yep.
Mayor, and then they give a recommendation, and then the council approves.
And a micro business, in case anybody doesn't know, is grown internally. It is in a environment-controlled building, and that's what a micro business is. The one in Grand Rapids is like 300,000 square feet. There are different micro businesses like 30,000 square feet, or 15,000, or 5,000 square feet. I think there's limits on what you do, but it's not someone growing it in their garden. It's somebody in a controlled, scientific growth chamber.
Correct, so at this
Correct me if
time,
I'm wrong on that.
yep, no, that's what we've heard.
Yep.
And at least 2 of the individuals have received their email from the state saying, congratulations, you are selected from the specific pool that has applied already. Once you have your location, and it's been approved by the location, then they put all of that together and are awarded the business license, and then that goes through the city as well. So I have forwarded them to our zoning official as well to ask that question of, where would you allow these to be zoned? We have 3 individuals. So The question that they're all asking me is the city supportive of having micro grow operations in our jurisdiction?
The city didn't limit anything with regard to their
Yeah.
ordinance about any of those, so.
And there's no public hearings, et cetera, that would have to happen?
The ordinance already happened.
Okay,
so-
all right.
Yeah.
So that's some of the questions, and I haven't been intimately involved with that part, so.
Sure.
So basically what you said, Andy, our ordinance authorized that opportunity within our city,
Yeah.
following our guidelines.
Right, the council didn't limit any kind of, at all with respect to those things, it's just where.
Yeah.
And that's, the council needs to approve the zonings. So I will touch base with Pat and Tina as to where that is to get something back to you guys, maybe at the next workshop, to see if you're in agreement with that, his recommendation.
So we have one more approval then at council to do before somebody can get a location secured for an operation like that?
Because the zoning itself has to be approved, I think, by the council. So I think that's the step that hasn't finished yet.
Okay,
Okay,
excellent, thank you.
thank you for that clarification, and that's all I had was those two comments. Counselor?
Nothing, thank you.
Counselor Whitney?
Candy, did you get that email I forwarded to you today? The person.
I did.
Person is still saying they can't access the
Yeah,
minutes.
the workshop ones were on there. The minutes for April 2nd. Remember, we came back in after we had closed session, and I had forgotten to put that part on, and so they'll be put on tonight, because Pete's gonna be signing them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Okay.
the only one that I can see that's not on there.
Good. Jay, you good?
Just an update, 23rd Street project starts Monday.
Oh, it does
So we'll
already.
be milling and doing boulevard tree removal next week.
All right.
And then the removals for curb and gutters, sidewalk, PUC water main crossings, steam work.
Yeah.
That's gonna, so 23rd Street will be pretty much closed all summer. Some portions will be open. Kelly put together a nice pamphlet. We had Jeremy put it in all the residential doorways. And then he talked to all the business owners, all the schools, churches. So we should be good to go.
That's an important street to get done too. That's,
Yep. Lining project, I think that started this week, cleaning and televising. So they should be, by the middle of June, they should be done. Our site or our alley project is being advertised right now for bids.
okay, and how is that going? I mean, can you answer, what is our alley project? And
So,
not the
yeah, it's-
funding, but the process.
So it's between First and Third Avenue West from 31st Street to 39th Street.
Okay.
So we have in there, it's,
So it's basically the non-steam areas.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, it's
That's all I
south
wanted to say.
of where the steam is.
Yep.
So it'll be concrete aprons on both ends, and we'll do a foot subcut with backfill and bituminous. So.
And that process, so they can sign up for this, or what is our process?
So this is budgeted, so we budgeted, say $500,000.
Right.
That's our engineer's estimate for the total
Yep.
project.
Okay.
Yep, so
So
that's city
unlike
funds.
sidewalks, this is not,
It's not a petition-based,
okay,
correct.
all right.
I did have a question, just not to go too far back, but on the memorial building, the 23rd Street project, did we end that discussion with any contention on the utility side about steam infrastructure? Where did you guys land on that with Luke?
Yeah, so there will not be the steam crossing going into the memorial building. The new condensate's gonna go to the south side of the building. And then gas will come up from 12th all the way up to 6th, and then go around the back side of the memorial building. So there's not a new steam line coming in the front of the memorial building.
So they're going up to Sixth, and they're gonna follow the, parking lot
With the
to
gas.
24th and then up.
Yes.
Because
with
originally
the-
they were going, 7th, but they've changed it to 6th now?
Yep, it's on the east side of the memorial building.
Yep,
It's 6th,
okay.
right? Yeah.
That makes sense.
They'll go down 6th and then come across to the rear entrance to the memorial building.
Water at the, I hate to say it, but water for the.
Plainview?
Yes.
So
Not having the steam there?
we just, I think we got a plan, I'm trying to think when we got that email. I think it was yesterday. So they're gonna put an 8-inch, go off the main, put an 8-inch up to the corner, and just go past where the pump house is. And we'll have a 4-inch service coming off that 8-inch to the new pump house. So that's currently being designed by Bolton and Mink, or the HPU.
So,
Temporary, we're gonna have temporary water feeding the pump house until that project is done.
so HPU is putting a new 8 the rest of the way to the end of the corner and then making the turn.
Yes, and
Okay.
going to the west.
Yeah,
So far, it was just a picture, it wasn't an
Yeah.
engineered drawing, maybe a couple hundred feet. Put a hydrant at the end,
yep,
and then extend a 4-inch service to our pump house.
okay.
But there'll be temporary water. Supposedly it was by Friday, but the pump house will be done by then.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Very good. Sorry to keep on it, but
yeah, no, it was a process to get that figured
Yes.
out, to say the least, but I think we got it figured out.
thank you. Gina?
I'm good.
Andy?
Pass.
All right, good evening, everybody.